The crowd gasped. The guardsman had moved. In an instant, the bottle shattered loudly against the pavement, and Jeff staggered back, his drunken bravado vanishing in a heartbeat. But when he turned and saw two officers approaching him, his face went pale. What happened next took everyone by surprise. But let's start from the very beginning. This channel won't survive without your subscription and likes. Help me! Buckingham Palace towered over the crowded square, its white stone walls gleaming in the morning sun. The ornate wrought iron gates divided two worlds, the one outside, noisy, chaotic, teeming with restless tourists, and the one inside, majestic and austere. A wave of travelers from all corners of the world ebbed and flowed, exchanging loud exclamations, snapping photos, and watching the motionless guards beyond the fence with childlike delight. Tour guides rattled off the grand history of the British monarchy, repeating themselves to keep up with their groups. Some visitors ate sandwiches on the go, while others whispered among themselves, staring at the guards in their scarlet uniforms. But in this colorful crowd, one man stood out, and not in a good way. A tall, lanky man in his 40s, with sunken cheekbones, dressed in a bright orange jacket, worn-out jeans, and a crumpled baseball cap with the American flag, staggered as he clutched a bottle of cheap beer. His stubbled face was flushed, his movements growing more exaggerated and clumsy. Every word he spoke was slurred, and the stench of alcohol hung heavy around him. This was Jeff, a man who had never heard the phrase, "That's not how things are done here." "Hey, folks, look over here!" he suddenly bellowed, waving his bottle so wildly that beer splashed onto the pavement. A few people turned, some chuckled, others shook their heads. Jeff, however, reveled in the attention. "I'm going to show y'all how a real American tames British steel," he laughed, flashing a drunken grin at the crowd. He took a step forward but immediately tripped over his own foot, barely keeping his balance. Taking another swig of beer, he stumbled toward one of the guards. The soldier was young, fair-skinned, with sharp, disciplined features. His posture was impeccable, his gaze fixed straight ahead. He was the embodiment of cold-blooded composure, but the thick stench of beer wafting from the approaching tourist was an insult to his deeply ingrained sense of duty. Jeff stopped inches away, looming over the guardsman. His breath, saturated with alcohol, washed over the soldier's face. "Dude, you don't move at all? Like a freaking robot." Jeff snickered, shaking his head. The crowd stirred. Some pulled out their phones, sensing a spectacle, while others quietly edged away, anticipating trouble. But Jeff wasn't stopping. He raised his bottle and, barely keeping his grip, slowly moved it toward the guard's forehead. A hush fell over the square. The spectators' hearts pounded in anticipation. No one had ever dared to show such blatant disrespect. Someone gasped. Cameras captured the moment. Jeff, swaying, tried to balance the bottle on the soldier's bearskin hat. In that instant, something in the air shifted. The tension became almost tangible, and no one knew what was about to happen next. The moment the bottle touched the soft bearskin of the guard's hat, time seemed to freeze. Even the usual hum of tourists, camera clicks, tour guide chatter, children's laughter, suddenly dissolved into silence. People watched with bated breath, like spectators in an arena before the decisive blow. A few nervous giggles rippled through the crowd, but they were forced and uneasy, as if no one was sure whether to laugh. Someone muttered, "Oh hell, he's really doing it." Others exchanged worried glances. No one had ever dared provoke the British Guard so openly. But Jeff was oblivious to the tension around him. He basked in the moment, grinning crookedly. Balancing the bottle, he turned to the crowd with a smug expression. "Oh wow, look at this guy. He's not even flinching. That's some serious discipline, folks." He chuckled theatrically. Some tourists flinched while others took a step back. Nobody wanted to be near him when this idiot finally got what was coming. Nearby stood Karen, a red-haired, slightly plump woman in a pink puffer jacket. Her face was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, excitement, and a hint of guilty pleasure. She wanted Jeff to stop, but she couldn't look away, as if watching a slow-motion disaster. "Jeff, you absolute moron! They can arrest you for this!" she hissed, gripping his sleeve. But Jeff was too far gone. In his drunk mind, this was his moment of triumph. He took a step back, crossed his arms, and smirked at the crowd, clearly expecting applause. "People, do you even realize what you just witnessed? This guy's like a freaking statue. He doesn't even blink." The crowd remained silent, and then, suddenly, the Guardsman moved. It happened so fast that no one had time to react. With a swift, precise motion, he raised his hand and knocked the bottle away in one sharp strike. The loud shatter of glass against the stone pavement echoed across the square like a gunshot. The crowd gasped. Karen let out a shocked squeak and stumbled backward. Jeff froze, his face draining of color. Instinctively, he flinched, his hands flying up as if bracing for impact. But this was just the beginning. The crowd was still reeling from shock. Shards of glass lay scattered across the stone pavement, the thin scent of cheap beer mixing with the crisp morning air. Everyone stood frozen, as if the scene before them wasn't real but a slowed-down clip on a screen. Then, suddenly, the silence was shattered by a powerful, commanding voice. "Stand back!" The Guardsman took a step forward. The movement seemed unnatural, like a statue coming to life. His facial muscles remained motionless, but his voice rumbled like thunder, echoing in the chest of every onlooker. The crowd instinctively stepped back, but not Jeff. He was too drunk, too full of himself to realize the thin line he had just crossed. "Dude, chill out. It's just a bottle," he mumbled with a nervous grin. But his voice wavered. Something in the Guardsman's posture, in his cold stare, in his sudden reaction, made the intoxicated tourist feel deeply, deeply uneasy. The Guardsman didn't argue. He didn't explain. He acted. With lightning-fast precision, he lunged forward, raising his rifle in a single sharp motion. The fixed bayonet stopped mere inches from Jeff's chest. His body reacted faster than his mind. He instinctively stumbled backward, his legs buckling, nearly sending him sprawling to the ground. Okay, I'm leaving," he yelped, throwing his hands up as if he were facing down a SWAT team instead of a palace guard. But it was too late. The crowd parted, clearing a path for two British security officers. Dressed in sharp black suits, their expressions stone cold, they approached with the kind of certainty that left Jeff with exactly 0 chances of escape. Karen, standing off to the side, covered her face with her hands. "Jeff, you're so screwed," she groaned, gripping her puffer jacket in clenched fists. Jeff swallowed hard, feeling the alcohol drain from his system, leaving behind nothing but sheer sticky fear. The crowd stood still, eyes locked on the unfolding scene. The tension that had been building finally erupted into action. The two officers pushed through the stunned onlookers and grabbed Jeff by the arms, twisting them behind his back. Their movements were precise, controlled, and practiced to perfection. Hey! Take it easy, guys!" Jeff yelped, but the officers weren't listening. One of them, a stocky man in a black suit, swiftly turned him toward the stone pavement. Before Jeff could react, click. The cold bite of metal locked around his wrists. The sharp snap of handcuffs echoed through the square. "You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and disturbing the peace," one of the officers stated in a calm, emotionless voice, gripping Jeff's shoulder to keep him from struggling. "Come on, man, it was just a joke," Jeff protested, his voice rising in panic. He squirmed, his face contorted in a mix of fear and desperation. His head jerked around, searching the crowd for someone, anyone who might back him up. "I didn't mean any harm. America. Freedom of speech. Bill of Rights, dude. The crowd remained silent. Phones were back up, capturing every moment. Some faces held mild amusement, others sheer schadenfreude. But no one stood up for him. The guardsman, as if completely unfazed by the commotion, calmly resumed his post, once again turning into an unmoving statue, as if nothing had happened at all. Karen let out a deep sigh, crossing her arms over her chest, shaking her head slowly. She watched as her friend was dragged toward a waiting patrol car, her expression nothing but exhausted annoyance. Same old dumbass Jeff. The crowd slowly dispersed. People whispered among themselves, reliving the spectacle, but the excitement had already started to fade. Some returned to their tours, others continued snapping photos of Buckingham Palace, and on the pavement, only wet beer stains, shattered glass, and yet another story remained, one about a tourist who thought he could mess with the British Guard, and lost instantly.